Clean it up, darling. Try not to let your incompetence stain the floor, Jason Thorne drawled, but Elena's smile didn't waver. He saw a waitress, a servant, a nobody, the fool. He has no idea about the intricate dance she was a master of. Project Chimera, that little scheme to steal pensions, he thinks he's being so clever. She'll let him think that a little longer. Word is, Thorne doesn't see people, only assets, liabilities. Well, Elena, Sapphira, knows a thing or two about assets, the kind you bury 6 feet under. He's about to learn dignity isn't a weakness. It's a loaded gun. He's playing chess and she's about to flip the board. Instead, she looked him dead in the eye, her voice barely a whisper, yet it cut through the entire restaurant. Man, don't dare me. He thought she was just a waitress. He was about to find out just how wrong he was, and the price of that mistake would be his entire empire. Ethel's was not a restaurant. It was a statement, tucked away on a cobblestone street in a forgotten corner of downtown. It had no sign, no website, and a waiting list that was rumored to be 3 years long. To dine there, you didn't just need money. You needed lineage. The air inside was hushed, smelling of old money, white truffles, and a faint floral hint of jasmine. The chandeliers were not glass, but hand-cut Belgian crystal, and the silverware was, of course, solid silver, so heavy it felt like a weapon. And in this gilded cage, Elena Sanchez was the most invisible and most observant person in the room. Elena was in her late 30s, but her eyes held a weariness that suggested she had seen far more than a typical food service career would offer. She was just a waitress, a title the other staff members, mostly aspiring actors and models in their early 20s, viewed with a hint of pity. They didn't understand her. Elena was never late. Her uniform, a simple black dress with a crisp white apron, was always immaculate. Her movements were economical, fluid, and silent. She never wasted a step, never dropped a fork, never forgot a face. The manager, a perpetually stressed man named Robert, adored her. Elena, he'd often say during the pre-shift briefing, "You'll be on Station 5. The Hamiltons are coming in. They'll ask for you." They always did. The regulars, the old money families, the quiet diplomats, they all preferred Elena. She had an uncanny ability to appear precisely when she was needed and vanish when she wasn't. But tonight was different. Tonight, the booking wasn't old money. It was new, explosive, and terrifyingly volatile. "Listen up, everyone," Robert said, his hands trembling slightly as he read from his tablet. "Mr. Jason Thorne has booked the Sovereign's table at 8 p.m. This is not a drill. I want perfection. No, I want better than perfection." A nervous chill went through the staff. Jason Thorne. Even those who didn't read the financial pages knew the name. He was a tech and acquisition shark, a man who didn't just buy companies, he devoured them. He was famously demanding, appallingly rude, and tipped in a way that was either obscenely generous or insultingly small, depending on a whim that no one had ever been able to decipher. He was a man who lived on dares. "He's bringing 2 associates," Robert continued, wiping a bead of sweat from his temple. "This is a business dinner. He has requested, and I quote, 'the best, most invisible service.'" "Elena, that's you." Elena simply nodded. "Station 7, the Sovereign's table." "Understood." One of the younger waiters, a boy named Leo, leaned in as Robert walked away. "Good luck, Elena. Last time he was here, he made my cousin, who works at Pire, cry. Literally cried, said the ice in his water was too loud." Elena allowed herself a small, unreadable smile. He can't be worse than the ambassador's wife, who insisted her steak was too red on the inside, but too brown on the outside. Leo shook his head. "No, this is different, Thorne. He's a different animal. He looks at people like us, like we're not even human, like we're just furniture that talks." "Then we shall be the best furniture he's ever had," Elena said, adjusting her apron. But as she checked the polish on the silver at Station 7, her gaze was harder than usual. Jason Thorne. The name was a cinder block in her stomach. She hadn't seen him in person in 15 years. Not since she cut the memory off, her face smoothing back into a mask of professional neutrality. This wasn't a reunion. This was a job she had taken for a very specific reason. And tonight, it seemed the reason was walking right through the front door. The hushed atmosphere of Ethel's didn't just change when Jason Thorne arrived. It shattered. He didn't walk into the room. He invaded it. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered and dressed in a bespoke suit, so dark blue it was almost black. His hair was thick, perfectly coiffed, and his watch, a rare Patek Philippe skeleton model, gleamed under the crystal light. He was flanked by two men. One was older, with a lawyer's tired eyes and expensive, ill-fitting suit. The other was young, barely 30, with a hungry, nervous energy. This second man, Dylan Foster, clutched a leather-bound folio to his chest like a shield. "My reservation," Thorne boomed to the hostess, not as a question, but as a command. He didn't even look at her. "Of course, Mr. Thorne. Right this way. Your table is ready." Elena watched them approach. She saw the way the other diners, the billionaires and the senators, subtly turned their heads. Some offered small, respectful nods. Thorne ignored them all. He was a sun, and everyone else was just a planet caught in his orbit. "Good evening, gentlemen," Elena said, her voice calm and pleasant as they reached the table. "My name is Elena, and I will be taking care of you tonight. May I offer you a drink to begin? Perhaps a champagne. We have a remarkable 1998 Salon." Thorne cut her off with a sharp, dismissive wave of his hand. "Don't upsell me. I know what Salon is. Bring a bottle of it and 2 bottles of the 05 Petrus and still water for the table. No ice." He snapped his fingers. Now he hadn't made eye contact with her once. He was already deep in conversation with his associates, his voice a low, brutal monotone. "The deal is simple, gentlemen," Thorne said, pulling a tablet from his briefcase. "We activate Project Chimera at 400 Zurich time. The moment the market opens, we initiate the hostile takeover. It's a clean decapitation." The older lawyer, Harrison, cleared his throat. "Jason, the board of that company, their old guard. They won't roll over. They'll fight. They'll call it asset stripping. Let them." Thorne laughed, a sound like gravel grinding. "It is asset stripping. I'm not buying Innovate Dynamics for their people. I'm buying them for their pension fund. It's overfunded by $2 billion. We absorb it, leverage it against the acquisition cost, and sell the company for parts. It's beautiful." Dylan Foster, the younger man, shifted. "Sir, the pension fund, that's the employees' retirement money? There are thousands of them. Some have been with the company for 30, 40 years. Thorne's eyes turned to ice. He leaned across the table, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "What's your name again?" "Dylan, sir." "Dylan Foster." "Dylan, you're new. You're smart. Don't be stupid. Money is the only ethics. That pension fund is a lazy asset. I'm putting it to work. Those people aren't people. They're a liability on a balance sheet. Are we clear?" "Yes, sir," Dylan mumbled, his face pale. Elena returned with the champagne, the bottles, and the water. She moved with impossible grace. She poured the water for Thorne, her hand steady. "Tell the Sumeyer to decant the Petrus for exactly 45 minutes. Not 44, not 46, Thorne commanded, still not looking at her. "Of course, sir," Elena said. As she turned to leave, she made eye contact with Dylan Foster. His eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and self-loathing. He looked like a drowning man. Elena felt a familiar cold anger settle in her chest. She had seen men like Jason Thorne before, men who built empires on the bones of liabilities. She took the Petrus to the Sommelier station, her mind working, connecting dots, Innovate Dynamics, Project Chimera, a $2 billion pension fund. She knew the company. It was an old-school tech firm, a pioneer in semiconductor manufacturing. It was also, she knew, based in Austin, Texas, her hometown. She returned to the table to take their food order. Thorne was in the middle of a tirade. "The whole system is built for me, Dylan. People like me. The regulations are just suggestions, lines for small men to stand behind. We are the ones who draw the lines." "But the SEC, sir," Dylan ventured, "the new framework on pension fund absorption." Thorne slammed his hand on the table, making the heavy silver jump. "Damn the SEC. They're a pack of toothless old women. The only thing that matters is speed. By the time they understand what we've done, the money will be in Zurich. The company will be carved up, and I'll be on my yacht. Elena stood silently, her notepad in hand. Are you ready to order, gentlemen? Thorne looked up, finally seeing her, and it was clear he didn't see a person. He saw an interruption. Get me the porterhouse. Rare. Charred. Don't bother me with details, he snapped. He waved at his associates. Get them whatever. They're not paying. Very good, sir, Elena said, her voice unchanged. But as she walked away, a plan was beginning to form. Jason Thorne believed the regulations were suggestions. He believed he was above the lines. He had forgotten who he was talking to. He had forgotten who used to write those lines. The dinner progressed like a slow-motion car crash. Thorne was a force of nature, consuming the wine, the food, and the dignity of his associates with equal terrifying appetite. He berated Dylan Foster for using the wrong fork for his salad, and he dismissed Harrison, the lawyer, for thinking too small. You're a worrier, Harrison, Thorne bellowed, pouring himself another glass of the Petrus. It's why you're on my payroll, and not the other way around. You see risk, I see opportunity. But Jason, Harrison pleaded, what Dylan is referencing, the new SEC framework, it's not just a suggestion. It's code 15C33. It specifically locks pension assets during a hostile takeover. Unless a waiver is filed 90 days in advance, you don't have a waiver. Thorne actually laughed. Code 15. See what now? You think I care? The transfer will be routed through our holding company in Zurich. Creditors AG, they don't care about the SEC. It's a loophole, Harrison. A big, beautiful loophole. Elena, clearing the bread plates, froze for a fraction of a second. Creditors AG. The name hit her like a physical blow. The most notorious shadow banking institution in the world. A black hole for blood money, laundered funds, and plundered assets. If Thorne was using creditors, this wasn't just an aggressive takeover. It was a criminal conspiracy. She saw Dylan Foster's face. He knew it too. The young man looked physically ill, his $80 a plate sea bass left untouched. I think I need some air, Dylan whispered, standing up. Sit down, Thorne commanded. The words were not loud, but they had the force of a physical shove. Dylan sat. You don't leave until I say you leave. You don't breathe until I say breathe. You're my property until this deal is signed. Do you understand me? Yes, Jason, Dylan whispered. His head bowed. This was the moment Elena had been waiting for. The moment of pure, undiluted hubris. Thorne, drunk on his own power, and the 2 bottles of Petrus he had mostly consumed himself, turned his attention back to his steak. He cut off a large bloody piece, and then, with a look of sudden, childish petulance, he gestured to Elena. You, he said, clicking his fingers. My wine glass is empty. Elena moved to the table, her face a perfect mask of serene professionalism. She picked up the 3rd bottle of Petrus. Sir, this is a very potent. Are you critiquing my consumption? Thorne sneered. Just pour the wine furniture. As she leaned in, Thorne, in a clumsy, arrogant gesture, waved his hand dismissively. No, forget it. I want more of the 98 Sun. Go get it. His hand swinging wildly connected with her wrist. It was an accident, but it wasn't. It was the physical manifestation of his carelessness, his entitlement, his absolute lack of regard for any person in the room but himself. The heavy $5,000 bottle of Petrus tilted. Dark blood, red wine gushed out, not onto the table, but directly onto Thorne's lap, splashing over his trousers, his silk tie, and onto the pale, terrified face of Dylan Foster. The restaurant went dead silent. The only sound was the drip, drip, drip of wine onto the marble floor. Harrison, the lawyer, looked like he'd seen a ghost. Dylan Foster was frozen in shock, red wine dripping from his eyelashes. Thorne looked down. He saw the stain spreading across his $10,000 bespoke suit. He saw the ruin. He looked up, his face pale with rage, contorting into a mask of pure fury. He didn't yell. He whispered. And it was so much worse. You clumsy, worthless. He stood up, the heavy chair scraping back. Do you have any idea what this suit costs? It costs more than your entire pathetic life. You are fired. He turned to Robert, the manager, who was now scrambling over, his face ashen. I want her fired. I want her blacklisted. I want her to never work in this city again. Clean this up. He snarled at Elena, who hadn't moved. And try not to let your incompetence stain the floor. This was it. The entire room was holding its breath. The other diners, the staff, they were all watching. They expected Elena to cry, to beg, to apologize. Elena simply placed the bottle of wine back on the table. She looked at Robert, the manager. She looked at Dylan, who was trembling. Then she looked at Jason Thorne. She looked him dead in the eye. Her voice was not loud. It was not angry. It was as cold and clear as ice. "Man, don't dare me," Jason Thorne blinked. It was as if the audio didn't match the visual. Before him stood a waitress, a nothing, a nobody in a simple black dress, now stained with his wine, and she had just spoken to him. No, she had challenged him. "What? What did you just say to me?" he hissed, stepping closer. He was a foot taller than her, a predator cornering its prey. Robert, the manager, rushed forward, his hands placating. "Mr. Thorne, please, I am so sorry. This is unacceptable. Elena, apologize to Mr. Thorne. Apologize right now." Elena didn't break eye contact with Thorne. "I said, don't dare me." Thorne's rage gave way to a bizarre, incredulous amusement. He laughed. "Don't dare you. Don't dare you what exactly? To clean my suit to beg for your job? What could you possibly do to me, you irrelevant little?" And that's when she dropped the first bomb. "I could tell you," Elena said, her voice still quiet, but now it sliced through the room. "That Project Chimera is a trap." Thorne's smirk vanished. It was as if she had slapped him. The blood drained from his face. "What? What did you say?" "Project Chimera," she repeated, her eyes like steel chips. "Your plan to acquire Innovate Dynamics. It's a trap, and you're walking right into it." Harrison, the lawyer, stepped forward. "Sir, she's clearly insane. She's just repeating things she overheard." "Robert, call security. Get this woman out of here." "Am I?" Elena said, turning her gaze to Harrison. "Or am I just the only one in the room who's actually read the fine print?" She turned back to Thorne. "You're relying on a loophole to absorb the pension fund. You're routing it through Creditas AG in Zurich." Thorne was no longer breathing. He was staring at her, his mind racing. How? How did she know the name? The loophole? Elena continued as if explaining a complex equation to a child, is based on the Swiss-US 1996 financial treaty, which has a non-disclosure clause protecting assets in transit. "That's what your lawyers told you, right?" Harrison's mouth opened and closed. He was speechless. This was high-level privileged legal strategy. "Here's the problem, Mr. Thorne," Elena said, taking a small step toward him. The predator-prey dynamic had suddenly, terrifyingly reversed. That treaty was superseded by the 2019 FATCA update, specifically Addendum 4B. It closes the loophole completely. The moment your transfer hits the creditor servers, it will be automatically flagged and frozen by both the SEC and the Swiss financial regulators. The instant that happens, your hostile takeover becomes criminal wire fraud, pension fund theft, and let me check my notes. Oh yes, a violation of the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. Rico, the restaurant was so quiet you could hear Jason Thorne's heart rate spike. That's not possible, Harrison stammered, pulling out his phone. That addendum, it was stalled. It wasn't, Elena said. It was signed into law 18 months ago. Your legal team missed it because you pay them to tell you yes, not to tell you the truth. You're not a shark, Mr. Thorne. You're a goldfish in a $10,000 suit, and you're about to be flushed. Thorne was pale, his eyes wide, a terrible dawning horror on his face. He looked at Harrison. Is this true? Is she? I don't know. I'd have to check. Harrison fumbled. You're over-leveraged, Elena said, hammering the final nail. You've put up 40% of your Thorne Capital shares as collateral for the loan from creditors to finance the takeover. The moment the funds are frozen, creditors will call the loan. You will default. They will seize your shares. They will have a controlling interest in your company. You won't just lose the deal, Jason. You'll lose everything. She paused, letting the words hang in the air, heavier and more toxic than the spilled wine. You? Who? Who are you? Thorne whispered. It was no longer a demand. It was a plea. Elena allowed herself the smallest, most terrifying smile. Me? I'm just the waitress, the furniture, the incompetence that stained your suit. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out not a rag, but a crisp white business card. She didn't hand it to him. She placed it on the table right in the puddle of wine, the red liquid soaking into the cardstock. You're right about one thing, she said. I am fired. She looked at Robert, the manager. My apologies, Robert. It seems I've made a mess. She untied her apron, folded it neatly, and placed it on the table next to the card. Then, without a backward glance, she walked out of the restaurant, her back straight, her heels clicking a death nail on the marble floor. Jason Thorne, Harrison, and Dylan Foster were left alone at the table, surrounded by the ruins of their dinner. The entire room was staring. Thorne's hands were shaking. He reached for the wine-soaked card. He could just make out the name embossed in simple, elegant black lettering. It didn't say Elena Sanchez. It said Safira M. Russo, Senior Partner, Retired U.S. Department of Justice, Securities and Exchange Division. The name hung in the air, an impossible ghostly presence. Safira M. Russo. Harrison, the lawyer, made a sound like a small animal being strangled. Oh my God, who? Dylan Foster asked, his voice shaking. Who is Safira Russo? Thorne sank back into his chair, his suit, his reputation, his entire life dripping with red wine. He wasn't listening. He was staring at the name on the card, and his mind was reeling back 15 years. Safira Russo wasn't just a lawyer. She wasn't just with the DOJ. In the 90s and early 2000s, she was a legend, a ghost, a myth. They called her the Oracle of Wall Street. She was the one who wrote the code. She was the architect of the very regulations that men like Thorne spent their lives trying to break. She was the one who brought down 3 of the biggest investment banks in history, not with a shout, but with a whisper. She didn't just find the loopholes. She created them as traps, daring arrogant men to step into them, and then she would snap them shut. She was brilliant. She was relentless. She was untouchable. And then 15 years ago, at the absolute height of her power, she had vanished. She retired, Thorne whispered, his voice. She moved to Italy to grow olives. That was the story. Jason, Harrison said, his voice trembling as he frantically scrolled through his phone. Jason, she was right. Addendum 4B, it's real. It's all real. The deal is poison. Thorne looked up, his eyes wild. Get me Marcus. Jason, we should now. Thorne roared. The spell was broken. Diners jumped. Robert, the manager, flinched. Get me Marcus Stone and find out where she lives. Thorne threw a black American Express card on the table. Pay for everything and you, he snarled at Dylan Foster. Not a word of this to anyone. You're not my property anymore. You're a witness, and witnesses can be disappeared. He stormed out of the restaurant, leaving a trail of red wine and sheer terror in his wake. The drive back to his penthouse was a blur of paranoid, high-speed thoughts. A waitress. A waitress. She had been working at Ethel's for how long? He'd been there a dozen times. Had she been watching him? He'd called her furniture. He burst into his sterile, white-on-white penthouse, an abyss of glass and steel overlooking the city. Marcus. A man emerged from the shadows. Marcus Stone was the opposite of Jason Thorne. Where Thorne was loud and ostentatious, Marcus was a whisper. He was Thorne's head of security, his fixer, an ex-MI6 operative with no record, no morals, and an unflinching loyalty bought and paid for. Sir, Marcus said, his voice a flat British monotone. A woman at Ethel's? A waitress? Elena Sanchez. No, Safira Russo. I need to know everything. I need to know where she sleeps, what she eats, who she talks to. I need to know why she was there. Find her now. Russo, Marcus said, the name not registering. Understood. And Marcus, Thorne said, turning to his floor-to-ceiling window, the city lights blurring in his vision. Project Chimera. Put it on ice. Call Zurich. Tell them to stand down. Use the emergency code Nightfall. Don't ask questions. Just do it. Yes, sir. Marcus melted back into the shadows. Thorne was alone. He ripped off his wine-stained tie, his hands shaking with a new emotion. It wasn't rage, it was fear. He had spent his entire life building an empire on the assumption that he was the smartest, most ruthless man in any room. In a single 5-minute conversation, a waitress had not only disarmed him, she had revealed that his entire empire was a house of cards, and she was holding the match. He poured himself a large glass of whiskey, but the liquid couldn't calm the tremor in his hands. Why Saf? He thought. Why a restaurant? Why me? This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't just a random encounter. This was an assassination. A targeted, precise character assassination. She hadn't just warned him. She had executed him right in front of his team. And then the most terrifying thought of all, she hadn't just told him about the floor. She hadn't just saved him from ruin. What if she had let him see the floor? What if this wasn't the end of her plan? What if this was just the beginning? An hour later, Marcus Stone returned. He was holding a single slim folder. Well, Thorne snapped. She's a ghost, Marcus said. And for the first time in the 10 years Thorne had known him, Marcus Stone looked unsettled. What does that mean? A ghost? It means that for the last 15 years, Sapphira Russo hasn't existed. No credit cards, no bank accounts, no property, no digital footprint. The Elena Sanchez identity she was using at the restaurant. It's a shell, a very good one. Registered social security number, tax or records, all paid on time in cash. It's a professional-grade cover identity. So where is she? That's the problem, sir, Marcus said. I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? You're the best. Find her. She can't have just vanished. Oh, she has, sir, Marcus said, opening the folder. There was one picture inside. It was a grainy security camera still from the alley behind Ethel's. It showed Elena Safara walking out the back door, untying her hair, which fell in a long, dark cascade. She didn't get in a car. She didn't call a cab. She just walked down the alley and disappeared from the frame. I've tracked her from the restaurant. Marcus said she walked 3 blocks, entered the 5th Avenue subway station, and that's it. She never came out. Not from that station, not from any other. She's gone. Thorne stared at the image. The woman in the picture? She looked different, younger, more dangerous. She's ex-government, sir. Top-level clearance. She knows how to disappear. This wasn't a job. This was a mission. Thorne's blood ran cold. A mission for who? Marcus Stone just looked at him. That's what you need to find out, sir. Because whoever she's working for, they just saved your life. Or they just put you in their debt. Thorne looked back at the city. He had stopped the deal. He had saved his company. He should have been relieved. But he only felt a new creeping dread. Sapphira Russo hadn't just warned him. She had activated something. She had put a leash on him. And now he had to wait. Wait for her to pull it. Sleep was impossible. Thorne spent the next 48 hours in a self-imposed prison in his penthouse. A caged tiger pacing his marble floors. He had done as Marcus suggested. Project Chimera was dead. The call to Zurich had been tense. The bankers at Creditors AG were not pleased. But the kill code Nightfall had worked. The contracts were voided. The pending transfers canceled. The cost was astronomical. The kill fee for breaking the deal was 9 figures. $100 million lesson. But as Thorne stared into his 20th glass of whiskey, he knew $100 million was cheap. Sapphira Russo had been right. He had his own internal team of forensic accountants, the real sharks, the ones he kept off the official books, run the numbers on her addendum 4B theory. It was worse than she'd said. She was being kind. His chief analyst, a man named Peterson, had told him over a secure line, his voice shaking. Sir, the addendum, it doesn't just freeze the assets, it triggers an automatic cross-jurisdictional criminal investigation. The DOJ, the SEC, the Swiss, even the German tax authorities. It's a red package. The moment the transfer was initiated, you wouldn't have just lost your shares. You would be facing extradition. They would have taken everything down to your cufflinks. Thorne had hung up. He was a dead man who had been given a last-minute reprieve. But by who and for what? He was a man who believed in a simple universe. You either ate or you were eaten. For the first time, he realized there was a third option. Being farmed. Had Saf been farming him? Had she been letting him build his empire all while knowing she could take it away at any moment? He looked at the wine-stained business card which he had fished from the table and now kept on his desk like a religious relic. Safira M. Russo retired. "You're a liar," he whispered to the card. "You never retired. You just changed your hunting ground." He obsessed over the details, her face, her eyes. He had called her furniture. He, Jason Thorne, a man who prided himself on seeing every angle, every threat, had been served champagne by the single most dangerous person in the financial world, and he hadn't even seen her. Then there was the other problem, Dylan Foster. The young man was a loose end. He had seen it all, heard it all. He knew the name, Safira Russo. He knew the details of Project Chimera. He knew, most importantly, that Jason Thorne had been brought to his knees by a waitress. Marcus Stone's advice was simple and brutal. He needs to have an accident, a boat, a car, something quiet. It's a risk. In the past, Thorne wouldn't have hesitated. A generous severance package for the grieving widow. A donation to a charity in Foster's name. Clean. Simple. But now he hesitated. He remembered the look on Safara's face when she'd glanced at Dylan. It wasn't pity. It was recognition. She saw his fear, his compromised conscience. What if killing Dylan was the real trap? What if Safira was watching to see what he would do? To see if the lesson had stuck? No, Thorne had told Marcus. Leave him for now. Have him watched every second, but he doesn't get a scratch. You're making a mistake, sir. Marcus had said, I'm paying you, Marcus. You don't get to tell me when I'm making a mistake. The Oracle does now. Get out. On the third day, with no word, no contact, no sign of Safira Russo, Thorne began to crack. He wasn't just afraid, he was curious. He was a problem solver, and this was the greatest problem he had ever faced. Why a waitress? He hadn't been able to get the question out of his head. Why that job? It was a demeaning, low-paid, grueling role. A woman with her mind. She could be ruling the world. Why was she serving it? He needed to understand. He needed to see her again. But she was a ghost. She had vanished. Or had she? He thought back. She wasn't just a ghost. She was a professional. She had a cover identity, Elena Sanchez. That identity had to have a home. Marcus, he yelled. Marcus was there as always. Sir, the Elena Sanchez identity. You said it had tax records, a social security number. That means it has an address, a registered address. I don't care if she's not there. I want to see where she lived. Sir, I'm not asking, Marcus. Take me there now. The address wasn't in a gleaming high-rise. It wasn't in a gentrified suburb. It was in a part of the city Thorne only saw from his helicopter, a 5-story pre-war walk up in a neighborhood that smelled of street food and diesel. She lives here, Thorne said, his voice laced with disgust as he stepped out of his armored Maybach. This is the registered address, sir, Marcus said, his hand inside his jacket on his weapon. The superintendent says Elena rented apartment 4B a year ago, paid in cash, always on time, a perfect tenant, quiet, no visitors. Wait here, Thorne commanded. Sir, that is a bad idea. I haven't cleared the building. If she wanted me dead, Marcus, I'd be dead. She wants something else. Thorne walked into the building. The lobby smelled of bleach and old cooking. He climbed the 4 flights of stairs, his expensive leather shoes echoing on the linoleum. Apartment 4B was at the end of the hall. He didn't knock. He just stood there. What was he doing? Was he insane? He raised his hand to knock, and the door opened. She was there. She wasn't Elena Nina, the waitress, and she wasn't the ghost from the alley. She was someone in between. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple, functional ponytail. She was wearing simple gray sweatpants and a black t-shirt. She held a steaming mug of tea in her hand. She didn't look surprised. She looked bored. You're late, Safira Russo said. I expected you 48 hours ago. Thorne's mind went blank. All the power, the rage, the fear. It evaporated. He was left standing in a hallway feeling like a schoolboy. You were expecting me. Of course, she said. She took a sip of her tea. A man like you, a narcissist with a control complex, you couldn't stand not knowing. You couldn't stand that I had the last word. You had to come. So come in. She turned and walked back into the apartment, leaving the door open. Thorne glanced back down the hall. Marcus was nowhere to be seen, but he knew he was there. He stepped inside. The apartment was small and sparse. There was a bed in the corner, neatly made, a small table with a laptop, a bookshelf, and one chair. There was no TV, no art, no clutter. It was the room of a monk or a spy. How did you know I'd come? Because I know you, Jason, she said. Steens knew. I've known you for 20 years. Thorne froze. What? What are you talking about? You've never seen me, she corrected, but I've seen you. You were a junior analyst at Lehman Brothers 2005. You were ambitious, brilliant, and utterly ruthless. You drafted a proposal for a new kind of mortgage-backed security, one that bundled high-risk loans and sold them as ALADA. It was a work of diabolical genius. Thorne's blood ran cold. That was his first real move, the one that got him his first bonus. Your boss, a man named Robert Mayfield, he spiked it. Sapphira continued, staring out the window at the brick wall of the next building. He said it was unethical and dangerously unstable. You waited 2 months, stole his credentials, pushed the proposal through under his name, and when he was promoted, you took his desk. He was fired 6 months later for cause. You ruined him. That's when I started my file on you. Thorne was speechless. You've been watching me for 15 years. 18? She corrected. I retired from the DOJ to go private. I run a private equity firm, a very, very quiet one. We don't buy companies, Jason. We fix them. Or when we can't fix them, we neuter the men who try to break them. She turned to face him, and now he saw her. The oracle, her eyes were not old, but ancient. They held the weight of 1,000 secrets. You let me build my life. We all have our hobbies, Jason. Yours is building sandcastles. Mine is studying the tide. Why now, he demanded, his voice cracking. Why this? The restaurant, the theater of it all. Because you crossed a line, she said, her voice hardening. Innovate Dynamics. It's not just a company. It's not just a pension fund. My brother-in-law worked there for 35 years. He's one of those liabilities on your balance sheet. He's battling cancer. That pension, it's the only thing keeping him alive. You were going to steal it. To buy another boat, to add another flaw to your ego. Thorne had no response. It was true. I couldn't just stop you, Jason. That's not my style. I had to make you stop yourself. I had to show you the cliff and let you decide if you wanted to fly. So what was Ethel's? Why? Why a waitress? Sapphira finally smiled. It was a cold, sharp, and deeply unsettling sight. That, Jason, that was the real test. She walked over to her bookshelf. It was filled not with novels, but with binders, dozens of them. Each one had a name on the spine. Blackwood Capital, Vantis Energy, Thor. I took the job at Ethel's a year ago for one reason, she said. It's where the predators drink. It's the watering hole. I learned more about your Project Chimera in one night of serving you wine than I could have in 6 months of digital surveillance. You men like you. You're so arrogant. You think people like Elena are invisible. You think we're deaf. You think we're furniture? She pulled the thorn binder from the shelf. It was thick. You didn't just fail the test of the law, Jason. You failed the humanity test. The way you treated me. The way you spoke to me. The way you treated that boy, Dylan. So what now? Thorne asked, his voice barely a whisper. You've saved your brother-in-law. You've taught me a lesson. Is it over? Oh no, Sapphira said, dropping the binder on the table with a thud that echoed in the tiny room. It's not over. This was just the job interview. Thorne stared at the thick, heavy binder. His name, Thorne. It was his entire life, reduced to a stack of paper in a dusty apartment. He felt a cold metallic taste in his mouth. A job interview, he repeated, his voice a dry rasp. For what? My retirement, C said. She sat in the single wooden chair, leaving him to stand. An intentional and devastatingly effective power move. I'm tired, Jason. I'm tired of swatting flies. I'm tired of watching men like you burn down the world and call it progress. I'm tired of wearing an apron and listening to arrogant hollow men plot the destruction of good people. So you're going to destroy me, he stated. It wasn't a question. He was already calculating. How much would it cost to make this go away? What's the price? How much? 1 billion? 2? Name your number. Safar actually laughed. It was a cold, sharp, and deeply unsettling sound in the quiet room. Oh, Jason, money? Do you really think I did all of this? Wore an apron for a year for money? You still don't get it, do you? You still think everything has a price tag? She leaned forward, and her casual posture vanished, replaced by the coiled energy of a serpent. This was never about your money, Jason. This was about your soul, and you showed me you didn't have one. Then why? He demanded, his voice cracking. The whine, the warning. Why save me from Chimera? Why not just let me burn? Because, she said, her voice dropping to a lethal whisper. You weren't just attacking a company. You were attacking my family. Thorne's blood ran cold. What? My sister's husband, Mark. He's one of your liabilities. 35s he's given to Innovate Dynamics. That pension wasn't just overfunded capital, you sociopath. It was his life. It's what's paying for the experimental cancer treatment that is right now keeping him alive. You with your asset stripping, you were going to personally sign my brother-in-law's death warrant, not for survival, not for need, but to buy another boat. She stood up slowly. You weren't just a white-collar criminal, Jason. You were, for all intents and purposes, about to put a bullet in my family's head. So I had to stop you. I couldn't just let you burn. That would have been an abdication. So this is all just a vendetta? He asked, grasping for a motive he could understand. It started as one, she admitted, but as I watched you, as I served you champagne, and listened to you berate that poor terrified boy, Dylan, I realized something. A destroyed Jason Thorne is useless. A bankrupt, incarcerated Jason Thorne is just another headline. It's a waste. She walked so close he could smell the faint scent of the simple nondescript tea on her breath. But a humble Jason Thorne, a Jason Thorne who has looked into the abyss and realized he's the one who's over-leveraged. A man who finally understands what it feels like to be the furniture. She smiled. And it was the most terrifying thing he had ever seen. That man I can use. Use me. I don't want to hire you, Jason, she said, her voice like ice. I want to own you. You are now my man in the arena, my asset, my shark. You're going to continue being a brilliant, ruthless predator, but you're going to be my predator, and you're going to hunt my enemies. You are going to use that mind of yours to do some good, whether you like it or not. She laid out the new terms of his existence. First, she said, the blood money. Project Chimera is dead, but you're going to make a generous, anonymous donation to the Innovate Dynamics pension fund. We'll call it $100 million. It's what you would have paid creditors as a kill fee. Now it's my management fee. It will ensure Mark and the thousands of other liabilities can retire in the dignity they've earned. $100 million, he sputtered. Second, she continued, the boy Dylan Foster. You didn't just scare him, Jason. You broke him. You made him complicit. Now you're going to fix him. You will promote him. You will make him your new vice president of, let's call it, ethical acquisitions. You will pay him double, and you will listen to him. He's your new conscience. Consider him my spy. If he so much as gets a paper cut I don't like, I'll know. Thorne's mind was racing, looking for an out, an angle, a counter move. And if I say no, if I tell you to take your binder and go to hell, Saphira's terrifying smile vanished. The oracle was back. Then I don't just go to the press, she said. I go to Marcus. I offer him twice what you pay him, and I'll tell him I know about Dubai. Not just the unfortunate accident with your rival Dimitri, but the real story. The one where Dimitri didn't fall off his yacht, but was pushed after Marcus's operative injected him with a potassium chloride solution to simulate a heart attack. A little trick to fool the coroner. Thorne's face went white. I will give Marcus a choice, she hissed. Go down with you or testify against you. And then as a little bonus, I will have him remember that you just gave him a verbal order to silence a young man named Dylan Foster. You won't just be ruined, Jason. You'll be buried. You'll be in a supermax prison so fast your head will spin and the only asset you'll have left is a pack of cigarettes. Um, I clear. She let the threat hang thick and choking in the air. The fight was gone. The arrogance, the power, the billion-dollar ego, it all evaporated. It was a fragile glass shell, and she had shattered it with a single perfectly aimed stone. He was beaten, not by the market, not by a rival, but by a waitress. Jason Thorne, the titan of Wall Street, the man who owned the city, finally slumped his shoulders, his head bowed. "Yes," he whispered. "Yes, Mom." "Good," she said, her voice normal again. "Now get out of my apartment. You're bringing the property value down." The next day, the financial world was stunned by two announcements. The first was that Thor Capital was launching a $200 million philanthropic ethics and tech fund. The second was the sudden shocking promotion of a junior analyst named Dylan Foster to a high-level executive position at Ethels. The staff was buzzing. "Did you hear?" Leo the waiter said to Robert Thorne had that crazy waitress Ilana. He had her arrested. Robert, who had received a personal hand-delivered apology from Mr. Thorne and a discretion bonus large enough to buy a new car, just shook his head. "No, Leo, I don't think he did." Miles away in apartment 4B, Safira Russo packed a single bag, her laptop, a few clothes. All the binders were gone except one. She left the Thorne binder on the small table, a little reminder for the new tenant should he ever get brave. She walked out of the building, not looking back. She passed the armored Maybach, which was parked at the corner. The tinted window rolled down. Jason Thorne looked out, his face pale, drawn, and different. He didn't look angry. He just looked managed. He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, a sign of acknowledgement, of fealty. Safira Russo didn't nod back. She just looked at him, raised a single eyebrow in a silent, permanent dare, and kept walking, disappearing into the crowd, just another invisible woman in a city she now owned. And there you have it. The night a billionaire titan thought he could crush a simple waitress, only to find out he wasn't even the most powerful person at the table. He thought he was the shark, but he was swimming in her ocean. This story is a powerful reminder that you should never ever judge a person by their uniform. The quietest person in the room is often the one with the most power. The one who is watching, listening, and waiting. What did you think of Safira's ultimate plan? Was it justice, or was it just a different kind of control? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one, and your stories and insights are what make this community so amazing. If you love this story, and we know you did, please show us some love by hitting that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to share this video with someone who needs a reminder. The true strength isn't about how loud you are, but how deep your game is. And if you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss another story of karma, justice, and the powerful truths hidden in Everyday 5.